the situation in the Middle East is entering a critical and potentially decisive phase. The United States is now applying pressure on multiple fronts: military, diplomatic, and strategic, while Iran faces growing internal strain and external threats. U.S. Central Command has released new footage showing precision strikes against Iranian military and government-linked targets. These attacks are not isolated. They are part of a sustained campaign aimed at weakening Iran's operational capabilities and limiting its regional influence. At the same time, President Donald Trump is actively pursuing negotiations, making it clear that this conflict will not be decided by force alone. According to the president, the United States is making serious progress in talks. He even suggested the possibility of a new, more reasonable regime emerging in Iran, an indication that Washington sees internal change as a possible outcome of sustained pressure. But alongside that message is a stark warning. If Iran does not reach an agreement soon, the United States is prepared to escalate further, potentially targeting and destroying Iran's critical infrastructure. That would mark a dramatic shift, hitting the core of Iran's economy and its ability to sustain itself. So while diplomacy is ongoing, the threat of escalation remains very real. Meanwhile, joint U.S. and Israeli military operations are intensifying. According to President Trump, more than 13,000 targets have already been struck, ranging from military installations to government facilities. The scale of operations suggests a coordinated effort to systematically degrade Iran's strategic capabilities. Speaking about the campaign, the president described the progress as moving along very nicely, emphasizing that significant targets were destroyed in recent strikes. He also confirmed that negotiations are happening both directly and indirectly, highlighting a dual-track approach: pressure and diplomacy operating side by side. At the center of this unfolding crisis is one of the most critical choke points in the world: the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is essential for global oil shipments, and any disruption here could have immediate consequences for the global economy. Iran has previously threatened to block the strait, raising fears of a wider crisis. However, in a move described by President Trump as a sign of respect, Iran has reportedly allowed 20 ships to pass through. Whether this is a genuine de-escalation or simply a temporary gesture remains unclear. What is clear is that the United States is not taking any chances. Military planners are actively considering additional operations to ensure the security of the strait and protect international shipping. Behind the scenes, preparations are underway for a possible ground operation. Thousands of U.S. troops are being deployed to the region, including Marines, paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division, and additional naval forces. However, officials stress that this is not a full-scale invasion. Instead, focus appears to be on targeted, high-risk missions likely involving special operations forces. One potential objective: enriched uranium. Reports suggest that U.S. planners are considering operations to locate, secure, or even remove large quantities of highly enriched uranium from Iranian territory. Such a mission would be extremely complex. It would require precise intelligence, complete air superiority, and rapid execution under hostile conditions. Even with advanced capabilities, the risks are enormous. As former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pointed out, operations like these are never without danger. Equipment can fail, conditions can change, and even small miscalculations can have serious consequences. But he also made one thing clear: if successful, such an operation could effectively eliminate Iran's ability to continue its nuclear program. At the same time, the conflict is expanding beyond Iran's borders. In a significant escalation, Iran launched a strike on a U.S. airbase in Saudi Arabia. The attack injured multiple American service members, some seriously, and damaged critical military assets. Among the equipment hit was a high-value U.S. Air Force command and control aircraft, essentially a flying command center that provides real-time battlefield coordination. The loss or damage of such an asset is not just tactical, it is strategic. It affects the ability of U.S. forces to operate effectively across the region. What has raised even greater concern is how the strike was carried out. Intelligence reports suggest that Iran may have received targeting assistance from Russia. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Russian satellites had photographed the same military facilities in Saudi Arabia just days before the attack. If confirmed, this would represent a significant escalation not just regionally but globally. It would signal deeper cooperation between Iran and Russia, potentially complicating the geopolitical landscape even further. And then there is the cyber battlefield. Pro-Iranian hacking groups have already attempted to strike U.S. systems, claiming responsibility for attacks against high-profile targets. One such group boasted that it had breached FBI systems, though U.S. officials later stated that no sensitive government data was compromised. Still, Iran has long been known to possess advanced cyber capabilities, tools that could disrupt financial systems, shut down infrastructure, or target critical networks. So far, however, those capabilities have not been fully unleashed, and that in itself is notable. As Pompeo observed, the most significant cyber attack may be the one that hasn't happened. This suggests that U.S. cyber defenses, and possibly offensive cyber operations, are actively limiting Iran's ability to act. Inside Iran, the situation is painfully opaque. A near-total media blackout has made it difficult to assess the true impact of the conflict. Information is tightly controlled and much of what is happening on the ground remains hidden. But there are signs of internal strain. Reports suggest divisions within the leadership and growing pressure on the regime as the effects of sustained military action begin to accumulate. Despite this, U.S. officials maintain that regime change is not the primary objective. Instead, the focus is on changing behavior. The goal is to ensure that Iran can no longer develop nuclear weapons, support proxy forces, or threaten global commerce, particularly in critical areas like the Strait of Hormuz. Ultimately, the future of Iran will be determined by its own people. But that process is complicated. With a population of over 80 million, strict internal controls, and security forces like the Basij still active on the streets, any internal movement faces significant challenges. Efforts to restrict internet access and control information further limit the ability of citizens to organize or respond. This is not a small or easily influenced system. It is a deeply entrenched structure with layers of control and resistance. And yet, pressure continues to build. From military strikes to economic threats, from diplomatic negotiations to cyber operations, the United States and its allies are applying force across every domain. At the same time, Iran is pushing back through military action, regional proxies, and strategic signaling. The result of an unpredictable situation. What makes this moment especially dangerous is not just what is happening, but what could happen next. A ground operation, a major cyber attack, a disruption in global oil supply, or a sudden political shift inside Iran. Any one of these could change the trajectory of the conflict overnight. For now, the world is watching, waiting, and trying to understand which path will ultimately prevail: diplomacy or escalation.